Morning everyone, welcome back to the shed. Hope you're all well today. Thanks very much for keeping up to date with this little kind of video build that I seem to be creating at the moment. I didn't really kind of plan to do this, but it looks like it's sort of entertaining everybody and people are following it. So I think I'll carry on with this. I'm not revealing too much about the model in terms of detailed shots, because obviously this is being created for a magazine article for Model Airplane. However, I think it's sort of useful to explain around some of those ideas a little bit more. So that's what I'm trying to do with this, and hopefully give you a slightly simpler route through the construction of this model than perhaps you would have thought of, or perhaps would have been apparent if you'd seen other pictures of the kit being built. So that's the kind of idea behind it. Well, I'm kind of 10 hours into this now. I've pretty much completed all of the major construction, and I'm now able to work on some of the smaller parts that I mentioned to you yesterday. So as it stands, it kind of looks like this. We have a almost complete airframe. So far there have been kind of precious few hurdles to jump over to get it to this point. Obviously I've not started putting any of the smaller details inside the fuselage yet. The engine's not in place, cockpit's not complete and painted and hasn't gone in. But as it stands, this is a pretty complete section. Last night I worked on the outer sweeping wing sections, these two. I mentioned yesterday that I would be building hardened wings, so I wouldn't have everything dropped away. I wouldn't have the slats dropped away from the leading edges, and I wouldn't have the trailing edge control surfaces in drooped positions. The reason for that is I couldn't really find a lot of photographs of fitters with their wings forward whilst on the ground with everything drooped. It's kind of a bit like the Tomcat in that respect. They tend to be pushed back when they're on the ground and everything tucked in. So it kind of follows that idea, that procedure. I dragged out one of these. This is the World Air Power journal. This one is dated summer of 1990, so it gives you an idea of how far back this goes. But as part and parcel of the of this particular volume, there is an entire section on the fitter, the family of fitters, all the way through from the SU-7 all the way through to the 22. So I had a quick look through this to see if there were any images of Su-17s whilst they're on the ground, and there are pictures in here, but they're all pretty much in those kind of tucked in positions. There are photographs on each of these pages that show those wings back. So I wanted to replicate that. I didn't really want to bodge the idea of an aircraft in a configuration that it wasn't, just for the sake of the model. So I didn't. So what I did last night was I built the wing sections. I've put them in there. They're taped into position at the moment to show how the model will look once it's kind of complete. The kit isn't really set up to allow the slats to be retracted. What it provides is a part with essentially the runners moulded away from the back of each of the slats, and they fit into depressions inside the leading edge of the wings. So what that means is, if you want to have the slats in their retracted position, you have to cut those rails away and then very carefully glue it in position. Now, I was concerned about that, I have to say. I did mention it yesterday. I was concerned that it wouldn't fit very well. The fit last night, once I'd done that, was absolutely seamless. It just kind of dropped into place. So what I did was I held the slat in place with my fingers like this, and I glued, starting at one end, started here, glued that, held that in place, and then worked my way along, and then tipped the part upside down, or the right way up actually, tipped it the other way up, and then I just ran a bead of glue along here, and then left it to dry, and then polished it with a piece of micro mesh, and the wing is now complete. The I guess movable sections on the trailing edge of the wing, I've got slightly inconsistent fit. The inner sections fit really well. The outer sections fit with a slight gap between their leading edge and the trailing edge of the wing. So along this edge here, there is a slight gap in there, which I can see if I hold it up to the light. And also the angle of the sort of the far edge of this aileron here against the cutout in the wing, the angle is slightly different. So it means that you need to very carefully remove a slither of the plastic so that it allows that piece to fit in. As it stands at the moment, holding up to the light, there is still a gap in there, which I think I'm going to have to deal with. The way I'm going to do that is probably just to drop crystal clear into that and then let it dry, and then work it around so that it just carefully fills that gap. I don't want to damage the sharpness of the edge. I just want to make sure that there's no hole that I can see through, and I'll do that on both sections of the wings. The fit, sort of oddly, of this part on one wing is slightly less tight than on the other side as well, so there is a little bit of a difference. But beyond that, and beyond the 30 seconds it's going to take me to actually fill that gap, those wings are complete. They're all ready to go, and then I can, and they do kind of slide nicely into place, so that's good as well. The other thing is, I spent some time the other day removing some ejector pin marks on the inside of the wing. The reason for that is I figured that if I had the wing swept forward, then I would be able to see in there. As it is, and when the wing swept back, it fills that gap completely. There's no need to deal with those. Those ejector pin marks will not foul the fit of this piece. They won't. It'll just slide straight over the top of those. So you don't need to worry too much about that. So that's where I am today. I'm at the point now where I can start to put some paint onto the inside of the cockpit and then work my way through that. Along with the wings, I have been given some further thought to the shock cone for the nose. If I can get this off here, I'll kind of show you what I mean. At the moment, the piece is sitting in between the two fuselage halves, and whilst I was messing around with that last night, I started to give some thought to the blanking plate for the nose cone to go into here, and this is the part that fits in there. It sits onto a peg on here and a socket on here, and it sits on that peg, so it can kind of move around, sort of wobble, if you like. Now I started to give some thought to that blanking plate, or whether or not to correct this piece and at least give the indication of some detail in there. I mentioned that once inside the intake, once you've got the shock cone in there are actually triangular sections that go above and below this piece and kind of hold it in place, and then it splits the intake, and then I guess the intake then forms into one tube that goes into the front face of the turbine. At the moment, I'm slightly erring on the side of maybe correcting this piece, removing those pegs off the assembly for the cone, removing the sockets inside here, and then cutting a disc in plasticard, maybe black plasticard, to go inside the fuselage to mount this again, but this up against. That part will then hold this section in place in the correct alignment, and then maybe build up some idea of those small triangular sections. When you put this piece in there, you can see how tiny those sections would be. So I'm sort of thinking about that at the moment. That really sort of depends on time. I don't want to hold this up too much with doing those kind of corrections, but that may well be something that I attempt. So we are very much on course to get this model finished. Like I say, I think it's taken about 10 hours so far. It's certainly not taken very much longer than that. I've been working on it for a few days now, but I've also had my other jobs to do, so this has been in between times. It's not presented too much still in the way of issues. Now it really starts to come together. Now I can see how all of those pieces that I've built up will come together and to create that finished look before I paint it. I've also decided on a loadout for this thing now. I've decided that I'm going to build an Su-17M3, and what that means is that I won't use any weapons on this. I'm going to use two drop tanks that will go underneath the fixed portion of the wings. There's a jamming pod, this crazy looking little fella. This is going to go underneath the left hand pylon, and then underneath the fuselage will be this large reconnaissance pod. I really like the look of this. It's kind of a big thing to go under there, and I think if I paint this, I'm planning to paint this in a metal finish, and that'll contrast with the camouflage as well. I think that'll look rather nice. Over the years I've used less and less weaponry on models and tried to strip them back and been more interested in the shape and finish of the actual machine rather than breaking all of that up with lots of different stores configurations, and this is pretty much along those lines. So there we go. It's another quick update on this model. I'm hoping you are enjoying seeing these kind of rambling little videos that show what I'm trying to achieve with this thing. There'll be a slight break in this. I'm off to the States next week to go to New Orleans for a show, so I'll be away for 4 days. So there may well be a break next week before, and then I'll pick it up again when I get back. And then once this is finished, I'm planning to do something similar with Italeri's 32nd scale F-35, which has just turned up. So you'll be able to see that as well. So hope you all have a nice day. Hope you found this useful. And as usual, you can leave comments underneath the video, and if you want to contact me, you can certainly do that. And you can also follow the blog. There is a link underneath this as well, so you'll be able to pick that up. Have a great day, and I'll see you again very soon. Cheers. Bye now.